Hey, bearded guys and gals, welcome back to an all new episode. I'm your host, the Bearded Biomed, and today we are joined with a friend of the show now, Tony Danko from Capital I. Last time we spoke about what Capital I brings to the table and how they're assisting our veterans, job placement. Uh, we just want to get into more of a little bit of the pulse of the biomed field today, just things that we're seeing across the industry, things that we notice with technicians, maybe credentialing, education, the whole bang. So, first off, Tony, welcome back to the show. Pleasure having you as always.
Thanks, Chase. I appreciate it. I've been working on my beard, but I got some catching up to do. We'll see.
Well, that's why I'm investing so much in it. That way, I'm carrying it for the field. This
I,
field beard is for the entirety of the biomed community.
I do appreciate that. So solid work.
The the discussion we were having offline, before we jumped on today was just kind of getting a sense of where the field's going, just some key trends that obviously have been a constant point of contention between just everything we're dealing with across the field. Biomed awareness across the United States is, still hasn't really been at the forefront of anything. That's the sole reason I started the podcast was, I was tired of people not knowing what the heck I do. We're just as vital to the ecosystem of the healthcare infrastructure. And, it's high time that obviously people know what we do, but we also want to get people into the field and be interested in doing what we do. So, uh, from your perspective, what's something that you like that we're doing for that outreach, and what's something I guess that you see that we could do better at, for that outreach?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that has been changing here in the last couple years is the push for the trades. Because really, if you look at the biomed field, it's a trade. It's a skilled trade that hits on a lot of different trades, whether it be electrical, mechanical, pneumatics. There's all kinds of different things that you're touching, but you're still a tradesman or a tradesperson. And in the previous couple decades where you and I grew up, it was always about you got to, if you want to be successful, you had to go to college, you had to get your degree, and you had to be a professional in something. Um, Everybody knows about being a plumber or being an electrician or being a mason, working with framing, but those other skilled trades just don't have a lot of advocates because it's not as prevalent. So really trying to get that message out to say, okay, college isn't the best track for everybody. You can be very lucrative and be very successful financially, and have a really rewarding profession as a biomed, and then you can also kind of tinker at home and kind of take care of things in the house. And that's one of the things that you and I had talked about offline a little bit, was that these younger generation coming into the field, they didn't have to fix their car like you did, just to get to work, right? So you had to pull out that crescent wrench or socket set to get it going. um, and you didn't know exactly what you were doing. You just jumped in. You started to figure things out mechanically, and you were problem solving, and that's translated really well into your career. Where it's like now it feels like the generation doesn't have to tinker as much as we had to tinker when we were younger. So that curiosity to hop into the field, or that willingness to fail a little bit to fix your own errors, to then repair that medical equipment or that device that you're working on, it's like we don't see that same curiosity that we did in generations past, and we're hoping to grow that. Um, but I think it's like it's backwards now. It's like you have
Yep.
to be taught, and then you take that into your personal life. Whereas previously, that was just
It
our
was it
life, and
was a
then we're
part of
taking
your
it.
life. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's perfectly broke down. Nowadays, I mean, I everything that goes wrong in my house, I try to fix it first before I call out a professional, whether it ends up with me electrocuted or not. Sometimes it does. tracing a bad wire in the wall in my outlets, or working on the water heater or the dishwasher or the refrigerator. That's something that was built into me as a kid, because if I wanted something to go my way, I had to tinker at it.
Mhm.
uh I don't know, like you said, if it's more of a matter of fact that they just didn't have to have that embedded in their life. Obviously, I think part of it's going to be regional as well, because some sections of the United States, if you're in more rural area, you grew up in a on a farm having to work with tractors, like you had mentioned. You know, uh, if you had a dad that was in the cars, you'd work on your car with them. There's this certain idiosyncrasies built into that hasn't really translated into the incoming generation.
Mhm.
um I kid, but I'm also serious at the same time. I've had technicians not know the difference between a Phillips and a flathead, and they're coming straight out of a biomed program. um Now some of them are just online programs. They don't have the in-house lab troubleshooting like, let's say, the military does. Funding a biomed program is expensive, and that comes with the obviously the training, the funding, but maintaining that equipment, breaking it, re-breaking it, fixing it, getting parts that are obsolete for it still, getting support on that. I mean, there's a whole lot into that, so I can
Mhm.
understand it to a little bit. But how do we improve that situation? uh First off, we call attention to it, which is what I've been trying to do. you know we have people that come interested from the field from all different walks of life, because like you said, we are essentially a trade, but we are a trade that dives into so many different things: electrical, mechanical, pneumatic, and so many professions can take their route from what they learned, integrated, and learn to be a biomed, uh, so simply. And plus they already have that tool craft. So it's interesting nowadays trying to find people when we're struggling so much to fill positions.
Right. Yeah. So it's it's that double-edged sword where if you're just going to be really choosy of who you want to bring into the field because they don't know the difference between a flathead and a
But
Phillips.
I'm not trying to
Um,
be.
right. No, exactly. Exactly. But it's important that you know it. That was probably what block one at biomed school is was a toolbox inventory and then wiring up a hospital grade plug. Right. That's where you started. Uh, those online programs can't do that. That immediate hands-on is just not available. But the theory's there, the theory's good. If there's anything IT related, the newer crop of biomeds are crushing it. Right, so that's a benefit.
Yeah.
But it's getting back to that component level troubleshooting that almost doesn't happen anymore.
It's so
And
hard, man. We
yeah, well, yeah,
It's
because I mean,
board
one, the
replacement nowadays.
exactly, and again, because it's actually cheaper that way, instead of using all the labor hours to solder, desolder, to mess something up, because things are very sensitive now. I think component level troubleshooting during education is important because then you can understand how that device works, how that circuit works, and knowing and understanding how a circuit works can help you troubleshoot, can help you problem solve. Not saying that we need to start pulling out a desoldering wick and pulling out these tiny little, the smallest components that are there now. Board swapping's it's just what we do now, but understanding the theory is also important.
Yeah, but can some of these newer technicians even know how to solder or desolder? That's that is a skill.
Yeah, who was it? Was it you or Justin that had posted a meme or posted something where someone was holding a soldering iron way at the like at the very end of it, like it was a pencil, like they would just burn their hands.
It's obviously, like I said, it's a cost thing, and the healthcare system it's driven by cost. To be frank,
Mhm.
especially when you get into the non-banner systems, the smaller facilities that have to be knit tight on their budget. Um, But that's why I'm so grateful that I came up through the military training program because they set it up to where you're allowed to fail and you could learn from it. Uh, I remember distinctively. I don't, I can't remember what block the Gomco was, but it
Yeah,
had
it
to
was
have
like
been
4 or
like block.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I haven't repeated the story since then, but I was still green. I wasn't like I didn't feel like I was really ready to be a biomed yet. Like I was still obviously learning, but it hadn't clicked for me yet. And I don't remember what happened. I think the instructor uh did another bug on me and I ended up catching the whole thing on fire. And I had to I had to repeat that block. What do they call it? Double tap back in the day or something like
Yeah,
that. I
yeah,
had to redo it because back then the success rate was a lot lower. It was like 60% or something.
yeah.
And I had to get humbled real quick. I failed. I had to go back, and then from then on out, I was a bug catching machine. Like I just, everybody always feared the continental X-ray in like block 10. And like that was nothing
Mhm.
for me. And like after I finished that and I realized, I failed on something so simple as a suction machine. And like I had just championed first time go on a continental, rad room. Like it was just that's when it clicked for me, like I can do this.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
wouldn't
there's
have
I mean
gotten to there if I hadn't had that hands-on opportunity to train, which military builds into their technicians. And this goes
yeah, and the
back to our last
confidence.
episode where like nobody really understands the benefit that a military trained biomed can bring to your program.
Yeah, yeah, and then go to that program. I mean, one like you almost burning down the school to then working with a complex X-ray unit. You left the program with some confidence that you can break something, and you would then later know how to fix it.
In all
So
fairness, I got to Fort Hood day 1 and my confidence got taken away again.
uh, they tend to do that at the great place, right? They'll bring you right down to where you start.
Well, because back then when I finished the program, the whole biomed situation on the base hadn't really taken off to what it is today, to where we were handling all the different. Because I was at First Med, and we were handling all the different biomed preventive maintenance repairs for the entire base, and that got split up between both of our med logs and all that. But before that time, we were just doing rinky-dink little here and there just to kind of keep our skills up. I remember the first
Hmm.
thing I worked on was a Hemacool refrigerator. I was so excited to PM something for the first time, and then I had at the time Chief Small John was my first warrant officer, and he said, "Well, I hope you're ready because we're deploying in 3 months." So get shipped off to Afghanistan, and that's when I really learned how to troubleshoot and be on the job. And that's what I like, bringing new technicians into the fray, because you get to really just enrich all your knowledge into them and build them from the ground up. But the caveat to the point before, I would like to build them up with a simple sense of toolcraft.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's like I said, the basic is a toolbox inventory, and maybe that's on us as employers or as we have technicians that we lead, is to make sure that we have that baseline. We establish a baseline. And that tool craft and understanding that, and the right tool for the job is a key component too, because you start talking about the right time and time savings and money savings. If you don't have the right tool, uh, you're just gonna be spinning your wheels.
Yeah. Well, we have to figure too. So we have the tool component of it. We have the, you know, starting success of where technicians starting their career. And like I tell all the new technicians, nobody knows everything. Um, Usually the most successful technicians are the ones that are just constantly learning and realizing that they're just going to get better with time, because our job is very inherent on experience and wisdom. You work on something and the next time you know exactly what that is whenever you see it again.
Hmm.
And as that builds up and equipment gets taken out, and the never ending cycle of the new device that the doctor had to have randomly, and then you learn it, and it all starts over again.
Yeah,
Um,
no, and that's one thing too, and probably that your experience tells you as well that you like working with good technicians and good engineers because in picking up those skills, you've learned how to learn, and it's just the different ways to think through problems. Not necessarily I was taught this way, and this is exactly how I have to do this. I mean, how many Gomcos did you see now for the rest of your career? Probably just that one at the schoolhouse,
that
but you got the
specific
theory.
old dinosaur, I've seen it once, and it should not be in service at this particular hospital I'm thinking of, but it still is.
But that Gomco didn't teach you just how to fix other Gomcos. It was other components and circuits, and you learned how to learn. And that's the other piece to kind of take from there. And
We need to
and then the
put
younger
that on a t-shirt.
technicians. What's that again?
Put that on a t-shirt. Learn
Yeah,
how to learn.
learn how to learn. Um, and that's what we should be promoting to folks within the field. Everyone wants to advance. Everybody wants to learn how or understand. How do I become a BMET 2, a BMET 3, or get into imaging? And really, it's digging in. You have to have those baseline, those table stakes of toolcraft and learning how to learn to demonstrate that you're willing to learn new things, and then to work within the systems. Everything from data entry into a CMMS, to filling out the forms, to writing legibly on stickers. Those little attentions to detail. That's what's going to get you to that Tech 2, Tech 3, and beyond.
Well, that's the other side of it, right? That I struggle with the field as well. Is you either I come across technician that doesn't have the troubleshooting skills, the tool craft, and then on the other side of that coin, you have somebody that just cannot get paperwork right.
Hmm.
They're lackadaisical when it comes to their documentation. They're not consistent. They're not timely at all. Turning in billing, work order reports, all of your just all the stuff that's required of your day-to-day job weeks after. You know, our field is very inherently, I mean, unfortunately, but it makes sense. We are tracked biometrics. We're a metric driven profession. So, how much are you contributing versus how much time we're paying you for? We have to document our time very well. Um, I think an in-house program, what the numbers like at least 85, 90%, if not higher nowadays, of what's
Hmm.
expected for
Right.
you to track your time. Uh, Being in a third party, ISO company like myself, I think we're around the 85 are what our expectations are just because we got windshield time.
Right.
But if you're not on top of your documentation, man, like you're not gonna be proficient at your job. And how are you gonna move up if you're not doing everything as a well-oiled machine?
Yeah. No, that's spot on. I mean, on my operations chief Sean, he really worries and focuses on, the trade craft, and are you technically able to do your job? And then I see the other end of it where if documentation is not done, we're starting to work with our finance section to bill or to pay out bills. And if the documentation is not there, it's like we miss a billing cycle, just because technicians either aren't doing their timesheets appropriately or they're not capturing all their information into the CMMS, so you can't prove through documentation that you actually did some work. And then we talked about the last episode, it's kind of that being able to optimize your program through a standardized documentation process. If that's lagging, or if that's just kind of halfway done, or if it's not just a great detail, you lose out on a lot of opportunity to better a program.
Especially I don't our company when we went to get the 9001 certification, that was a wake up call just to truly understand like how much better we could be because it's system improvements, right?
Hmm.
And for those people that are, because I see the question start nowadays, everybody is looking at ISO certification because we're trying to uplift our particular program, our company to be acceptable within the realm of what OEM's saying we are not. So this is a huge part of you wanting to get into that ISO branch of really just getting your documentation, your teams running on all cylinders. Um, but let's just say you don't even care about the ISO portion of it. If you're talking about, you know, justifying sending out your billing, you're missing profit in all manner of the sense. If you're missing billing and not getting that stuff sent out, the billing is what justifies the cost that we're spending, the budget that we're contributing to is what justifies our technicians' jobs.
Hmm.
So if we're not hitting those metrics at certain points, then we're losing our leg up, our argument to maintain our team as it is, much less build on that team. Like nobody wants to stay stagnant with their team. Everybody wants to have a bigger growing team. And, I hear people talk about this, and what are you doing to not only maintain, but improve the whole metric of what you're doing with your documentation to justify you growing your team?
Yeah, and the other thing too, some people fear if they become too optimized, then they're working themselves or they're optimizing themselves out of existence. But there's always more work to do. There's a deeper way you can service devices. So I did a survey with a client a few years ago, and what I found was that over 65% of their time that the technicians were working was spent on low risk or no significant risk equipment, and then 35% of their time was spent supporting high risk or life safety equipment.
Ugh.
It seems like an
It
imbalance, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, oh, I have to do all these PMs, I have to do electrical safeties, right? So that takes the time. But if you optimize or you start to really document and you can understand where you can do an AEM program, reduce the requirement to service that low risk stuff, and then increase your time that you're supporting that high risk or life safety equipment, I think we're just going to have a much better environment. And there's plenty to do where we're not going to start cutting biomeds just because we have an AEM program. But if we can't say we're doing this work in the first place, then you can't justify in the
Right.
existence of how many techs you have.
I mean, we're in the field because we want to make a difference in patient safety and patient care overall. And if we're not doing the little things to make sure we're getting not the not important stuff, but you got to figure, there's so many little things that aren't as critical and honestly probably could never hurt a patient that we're spending a
Mhm.
lot of time on when, like I said, that percentage, that survey you just said, just it made me cringe a little bit because I'm like, it should be vice versa. But understandably, I guarantee a lot of those, it's because they don't have a program in place to put their time justly on what should be put on. Um,
Right.
a lot of the facilities usually a lot of the greater volume of equipment, it's on the stuff that's just disposable or is on consignment or loaner items, things that just travel from hospital to hospital or break, and then it's just more cost efficient to replace than it is to actually repair. Uh, the higher end items, I would hope that, people are, like I talked about, getting the documentation exactly how it needs to be.
Mhm. Yep. And then one of the other trends too, where the field's going, where we're going to need more time education to support is on the cyber side. So you start to reduce what you're doing with thermometer scales and beds, and you're really working on cybersecurity or medical device integration to a electronic health record. But that cybersecurity piece is a huge component of what we're supporting with different clients now, and it's what we're really seeing is to have that biomed that also has like an information systems background. I mean, because that is coming, and that's not going to go away. It's just going to get more and more
At the very
prevalent.
least, know the lingo, be able to communicate with IT to navigate the systems, you know, because what people don't realize, and I think what a lot of the issues that biomeds and ITs butt heads is because they don't know each other's language.
Mhm.
Something might be asked for to where IT understands, but got to realize IT's not trained in doing anything on medical devices. That's where we come in. We are the
Right.
bridge between that device and IT doing to make everything communicate and work together. And then we also have to understand that a lot of the devices out there right now are running on old firmwares. The OEMs are only, they only have to be responsible for so much. And
Hmm.
then like you said, a lot of the newer technicians coming out, I've seen some technicians that could troubleshoot an entire network, that can dang near do anything, hack systems, whatever. Like they are just computer geniuses. And we gotta take those and kind of fill them up with all of our knowledge from the old school way of biomed. And
Yep.
that's gonna give us the next generation, that next fighting battalion of biomeds that can do both and do it well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think in the last episode we talked about um, talking to clinicians and building that rapport with the clinical staff and those administrators with those departments that you support. But I think it's equally as important to get somebody in IT that you hooked up with and learn that language and learn the new trends. Our CIO is constantly educating me on what's happening, whether it be just in cybersecurity or different type of database or networking. We play around with Chat GPT nonstop, just kind of messing around with some AI stuff. But I mean, a lot of these tools and gee whiz things that are coming through, um, they're going to start running the field and touching everything that we touch. And having that understanding and being able to speak that language, you're absolutely right. So I think link up with an IT person or somebody within your IT department and build that rapport with them just as well as you do with the clinical side. It's just going to pay dividends.
So let's pivot just a little bit, but still stay within the same realm. Uh, Capital I, obviously, you guys, I would assume you deal with so many different manners of programs and companies and positions. What are just some of the, I guess, hindrances or just like, things to take note of that you've noticed across the field that, you guys have data on that you've kind of, you can put a finger on, I guess, that is worth shareable.
Y- Yeah, I think you hit on some of that stuff, particularly on the IT stuff. Um, Not every biomed program has a relationship with the IT program, and then speaking that language and ensuring that IT doesn't do something because they have the tools and methodology to patch or fix devices. They may go ahead and do something it's to the detriment of patient care. So just that education and working through that piece is a big portion. Some of the other things that we're seeing um, will be also with the planning and the procurement of equipment, planning through future proofing, if you will, the IT integration, understanding where devices are in their manufacturing cycle. If you're going to buy a piece of equipment that's 5 years into its production cycle, it may have some IT flaws. It might be
The
vulnerable.
hard part for that though is I come across many facilities that biomeds are not a part of the conversation when it comes to procurement.
Hmm.
And I wish there was like an end all solution to change that across the landscape, but I mean it's a very common thing that hey, by the way, we bought this contract and everything's already been signed. Uh what no, we didn't get
And
a
we didn't get any
manual. No,
manuals
yeah.
with it either.
Oh my god, it drives me nuts. The whole procurement contract negotiation phase, it's so critical, and yet biomeds typically aren't a part of that unless I've heard of systems out there where they've made themselves a part of it, and like, uh, what do you know, things run a lot smoothly. Um, you know, when you're talking about cybersecurity and just the whole IT component of it, it's that's just the high end of it. Even on the low end, like my company being third party is we're in different facilities all the time. We're not just integrated into one system. And I know speaking to some of the other guys out here in DFW from their standpoint and their third party perspective. it's even so much more difficult getting a relationship with IT. Uh, just recently, I had a health system. There's multiple hospitals that, under the system that we take care of, and they had a Welch Allen Connex Vital machine or whatever it needed to get sent out, um, just because it was under warranty. So hey, cool, let's get it out there. It's that the cost is covered. Basically, the nurses were pouring cleaning solution and fried the whole board. Um, they sent it out. Welch Allen sent it back, and typically for majority of medical devices, when it gets sent out to the OEM for repair, it gets reestablished to factory default. Well, what does that normally do in respect to IT? It wipes all of the credentialing, all of the network addresses, the IP, security, everything. So something as simple as that, having a relationship with any IT department just to reintegrate that device back into the system to know what the network phrase is, the security keys and all that kind of deal. Uh, it was a little bit more difficult for us because they had like a corporate IT third party system that was not in the
Mhm.
facility. So it took probably 2 weeks to finally figure out who we needed to speak to get this back on the network. But imagine if this was something more critical, like an actual cyber attack.
Right.
I mean, this isn't going away. It's only going to become more prevalent. And I think, through the discussions that I've heard at some of the conferences, just people talking and just regular day to day, I think people are finally starting to see that we need to start integrating cybersecurity and the relationship between biomed and IT more, because this is only going to get more ramped up.
Yeah, and I think the other piece too is it needs to become part of the planned maintenance procedure to go through and validate IP addresses and MAC addresses and all that information, the administrative information inside of the CMMS for that device, and then also kind of looking at patch updates and software versions, and that might be part of the planned maintenance schedule is to update and patch. You see that
There
very
are
rarely.
CMMSs out there that will
Mhm.
allow you to track that stuff.
Yep, absolutely, and it's more and more prevalent now than it has been, I would say, even 5 or 10 years ago for sure. So I think that's really, from a leadership perspective, two things. One, yeah, start to incorporate that into your planned maintenance, and then the other piece too is for equipment acquisition and those replacement plans. You just almost have to be insistent that not only a clinical engineer or an HTM leader is part of that purchase decision, but bring a biomed that will have to service that equipment, bring their perspective into that decision making process.
Man, we hit on some heavy subjects, didn't we?
We did.
We
We could
covered a
probably keep
lot
going
though.
for another 30 minutes.
So before I let you go today, I normally have a few games on the show that I like to play with some of the guests. And this isn't so much a game, it's just a question, but everybody seems to enjoy it. So we're gonna roll into that. I'm gonna play the intro and I'll explain it as we go.
Okay.
To be or not to be?
So this segment, to be or not to be, is basically something I came up with because biomeds are inherently nerdy by trait or weird. Some in the middle. I fall in the middle. Um, I always think about like if I could be any medical device and take any medical device and its function, and that is your superpower, or you'd have the ability to do what that machine does, but just naturally. What machine would you choose and why?
I would be a dialysis machine. Um, I go into organizations that are just a mess, and I kind of start to consume it, run it through the process, and then push out something clean and life sustaining. So that's where I would be.
Be the most successful person ever. Clean up all the crap in hospital
That's
systems.
right.
Yeah. You can imagine the possibilities, people.
Yep.
Oh man. So I appreciate you being on today. Again, it's always a pleasure just talking shop with you and understanding where the field is, where it's going. We have a lot ahead of us, but we also got a really robust ecosystem that we've built over the decades that you know people before and after us that are just going to continue to contribute and make this field what it is. So uh before I let you go, is there, I guess, any word of wisdom or, something that anyone listening could take with them after today that you would just lead them with?
Yeah, I would just say, in this day and age, as a biomed, if you want to advance, you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You need to be able to learn new things, and just really put yourself out there. So if you're comfortable, that's fine. And some people are content, but you're not going to grow. So you need to be uncomfortable.
You heard it from the man himself. Tony, as always, appreciate having you on the Bearded Biomed podcast. And until next time, may the beard be with you, sir.
Thank you, Chase. You take care.
Bearded Biomed.